When I first met Bob, I realized I had never known someone with the combination of super intelligence, street smarts, and a sense of humor that knew no bounds. He was funny, like Jerry Seinfeld. He was witty, like Lily Tomlin or Steve Martin. And he was silly, like the Three Stooges.
I must have been about 12 years old, and my dad was very excited because he had gotten invited to a wedding. And he arrived at the front door, and he was wearing a beautiful white tuxedo top and a beautiful bow tie. And he was wearing tennis shorts and white socks and tennis shoes. And we snapped some pictures and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I looked at the invitation and it said semi-formal."
I think it's so important to inject humor into everything you do. Bob really does that. It's human.
This is an executive of great prominence, a very successful executive, coming out of the car from the office wearing a hat, winter hat, that has a pig snout on the front and pig ears. His humor wasn't just in the things he said, it was in the things that he did, but he doesn't try and make a big deal out of them. It's just, I find it hysterical. Can't you tell by the look on my face? I'm hysterical.
At Bob and Jan's Shelburne house, I was there for one of the mini reunions in August. And in the middle of the night, one of the ladies, Betty, she got out of her room to go to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom and she went back to the wrong bedroom, opened the door, and tried to crawl in bed with this other couple. She was totally embarrassed by it. We all had a good laugh. So the next year, we show up, and on everyone's door except Betty's is a big sign saying, "Not Betty's room." Not Betty's room. And on her room, it's Betty's room. And there was a rope that went from Betty's door to the bathroom so she could get there and get back. And that was all Bob.
He was at a meeting of D&B senior executives, and one of them said, "Don't you feel guilty about saddling us with this company, National CSS, when the business was falling apart?" And Bob said, "I don't know if you noticed, but I was, for about 3 or 4 days a couple of weeks ago, I was gone. Actually, I went to Sweden, and I had a guilt-ectomy. So any guilt I might have felt about saddling D&B with my company is gone now, and I don't feel any guilt at all." So that's the type of thing he would say in situations, really no matter what the situation was. He was pretty funny that way.
Humor is applicable anywhere, even in the business world.
He was making a presentation at a national sales meeting for Reuben H. Donnelly, the Yellow Pages. He was the CEO of Dun & Bradstreet at the time, and he flew out to California, was in this California hall. All of the attendees were salespeople. He's got a suit on, and he says, "Unfortunately, this is not who I am, and I want you to know who I am. In fact, the pilots in the plane are now in their jockey shorts because I've got their suit on." All the salespeople are in the crowd, they're on edge. And as my dad is beginning to tell the story, he undoes his tie. He throws the tie on the ground, it's getting some people's attention, and as he continues to talk, he now is unbuttoning his shirt, and he's wearing a Daffy Duck shirt. So all of the salespeople are now on their feet looking down to see what he's going to do next. He undoes his shoes, his socks, he drops his pants, walks out from behind the podium, and he's wearing Donald Duck shorts with a Daffy Duck thing, raises his hand, and the crowd goes bananas for 3 minutes.
The jokes could break up a tense situation, could enliven a dead situation, and it's such a unusual combination to have somebody with the wisdom and the insights, and to be able to combine that with humor just puts everybody else at ease in the room.
I think he was president at Dun & Bradstreet, and he was heading out to Wickenburg, Arizona, where the chairman and CEO, Harrington Duke Drake, was hosting this thing at his house in Wickenburg. And my dad had orchestrated this Sherman tank that was remote control, and he kind of ducked off to the side, and as Duke was kind of making his big points, over the horizon and over this little hill comes this Sherman tank, remote control, that is firing at Duke. Now, all of the attendees weren't sure whether they should laugh or not, and my dad was rolling on the ground hysterically because he didn't really care. He thought it was really funny. So again, not taking himself too seriously.
I wanted a parking space close to the building, and that was never granted, and I was often late coming to work. I think there was some sort of contest. I had to do something, and whatever it was, one day I must have accomplished that. There was a big sign in the prime parking space closest to the building. It had a picture of a silhouette of me with the big gut. It didn't have my name or anything, but everybody knew that that was to be my parking space.
Why did he resist the parking space?
I don't think he thought it was right.
Why wasn't it right?
Nobody should have, management shouldn't have that privilege, I guess.
I mean, you understand, humor carries messages. Humor is a very important part of delivery of messages, and what Bob will write will be humorous, I can assure you.
Every chairman at D&B had in the boardroom an oil portrait, and they all looked like you might imagine oil portraits would look. And it came time to paint Duke Drake's portrait. They painted a real picture. Then they painted, I think at Duke's request, a second portrait for his own use in a cowboy outfit. So it comes time to unveil the portrait. And Bob transferred the portraits. And under the drape was a picture of Duke as a cowboy. And the incoming CEO, Charlie Moritz, was very, very uptight guy with no sense of humor whatsoever. And the drape comes off the portrait, and Moritz almost swallowed his teeth. He didn't know what to do. He was so mortified by this idea, till they finally let him in a joke, let everybody else in a joke. That's the type of thing Bob did.
His humor is so intelligent, and I know that sounds crazy, but I really admire his ability to take funny things and put an intellectual twist on them.
Very clever, very deep, and sometimes your pants are pulled down and you don't even know it's happened for 3 days. It's one of his ways of measuring people.
Heinz Nixdorf was president, owner, founder of a computer company in Germany called, not surprisingly, Nixdorf Computer. We were going there, we being Bob, Mike Field, and me, and probably that's it, to talk about maybe some relationship where they would use our software. Nixdorf are obviously German, and Nixdorf sits down, and after the introductions, he says, "Tell us your business, please." So we went on about what we did and how people used our computer software to do this and do that. And Heinz at one point said, "Nein, we do not do it that way. Our people find a solution, and then they pass it on to the next group who finds another solution, who turns it over to the next group and finds another solution, and then we finally end up with the final solution." Well, it is apparent that Nixdorf didn't think about the final solution in the sense of Germany and Hitler and whatever, but his two lieutenants were as uncomfortable as any two people I've ever seen sitting in that room. Bob leaned over to me and said, "We should tell them we were circumcised for hygienic reasons," which would which was a Bob classic. Don't be afraid to do things that are a little unusual like that, because they'll make most people feel good.
Keep your sense of humor, because that's what really makes businesses successful. It's not always about being serious. You gotta have a good time and you have to laugh. Can I stop now? No.